Hi, everyone. I'm Matthew DeSantis,
And I'm Kaylie Shapiro.
and welcome to this very special preview of the Black-Eyed Susan and Preakness Stakes. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this NYRA Bets preview of this Friday and Saturday's Black-Eyed Susan and Preakness Stakes, taking place at a potentially very rainy, very soggy Pimlico racetrack in Baltimore, Maryland. Of course, the Preakness is the second leg of the Triple Crown. We have a very special guest, a Maryland bred of our own from up here in NYRA, that's going to be joining us in a second, Maggie Wolfendale. But before we get to Maggie and her thoughts on these races, I want to remind you to press that like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is entirely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos drop on the network, whether it is race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, specialty programs, and so much more. Like I said, we got you covered for the Triple Crown, Saratoga, the Breeders' Cup, the whole 9 yards. So like and subscribe today. Kaylie, we got through the first leg of the Triple Crown for both the boys and the girls. Now we're going to the second leg, Black-Eyed Susan and the Preakness. Before we bring Maggie on, just quickly, some of your thoughts on the races coming up and your excitement level for this weekend.
Obviously, super excited to see the second place finisher in the Derby come back in the Preakness. Although the winner's not going, it's pretty great. We have this horse that was second best that day. That obviously draws in as the best horse in this field. So really excited about the Preakness and the Black-Eyed Susan. The longer I looked at it, the stronger of a race it honestly looked like from a betting perspective. So pretty excited about that one too.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more about your comments on the Black-Eyed Susan in particular. I think a really good betting race. So listen, without any further ado, you don't want to see me and Kaylie. You want to see Maggie. Let's get her on here. Maggie, how are you doing? Welcome to NYRA Bets YouTube. And this is a big week for you as a former, and I hope I'm getting this right, Miss Preakness? No? Yes?
Yes, 2008. So I can confirm that Michael Ivarone has not always been the way he is now. That's when I first met him. And he was pretty normal.
Back in the day, he was pretty normal.
Yeah.
So basic, a lot of things have changed since 2008, and so
A lot.
a lot. So obviously, listen, I made comment, from down in Maryland originally. Just before we get into these two races, talk a little bit about what this weekend means to Maryland racing. And, for people who might not be quite as familiar with Maryland racing, just kind of this great tradition and history there. And it's great to see that they're, continuing to try to revitalize this with the rebuild or remodeling of Pimlico as well.
Right. And so, this is the last year that we're going to have Pimlico in all of its former glory. Glory, I should say. The grandstand. Oh geez, I can't remember when the original burnt down, but it was a turn of the 20th century, and so they're kind of going for a rebuild of that. But anyway, it is so important to Maryland racing because Maryland isn't often on the big stage like Kentucky and New York are for the other legs of the Triple Crown. And so really it gives them a chance to shine. And the one thing that I can say is that Maryland is really, really good to their horsemen and women. Their hospitality is really second to none. They do the most with the resources that they have, which compared to New York and Kentucky are far inferior in a way. I mean, you look at it, it's just a joke, right? But they really go out of their way to try to take care of their people and their horses. And that's always something that has remained near and dear to my heart.
Absolutely. And I will just say, as somebody who lived in Northern Virginia for a while and would drive up to Pimlico regularly for big race days, I go to Laurel Park as well. And always a great time. Black-Eyed Susan Day, one of my favorite days to attend racing. Preakness Day, always fun as well. So, yeah, it's going to be really great. And listen, if you're talking about, having a soft spot for a track that's doing the most with the least, NYRA Bets, we can very much so identify with this sometimes when trying to keep up with our competitors as well. But let's dive into these two races, and we'll start with the Black-Eyed Susan. And this is a field of 9. Your morning line favorite's Runnin' and Gunnin', who kind of only has one good figure from her last race, really. I feel like it's a very even field in a lot of ways, and I'd imagine there's going to be a fair amount of movement from this morning line. So
Right.
Maggie, I'm interested in kind of your thoughts or kind of what your first impressions were of this field and kind of who grabs your attention.
She just looks slow. I mean, if she wins, fine. She's a good looking horse. I saw her out at Oaklawn, but she just continues to run slow figures. There was a jump up in the fantasy, but look how far she was beaten by Quiet Side and Simply Joking, whom didn't run particularly well in the Kentucky Oaks, but still, I think they're respected fillies in the division. So then again, they didn't run well in the Kentucky Oaks, so maybe you take that as a knock, even more so against running and gunning in here. We see Margie's Intention, the Louisiana bred, at 3-1, your second choice on the morning line. She has, the ability to be close. Now, I don't know the story of why she's gone to Brad Cox. Was she a private purchase?
I think so, but I'm not sure if she was, going from Brendan Walsh's to Cox's barn here.
I feel like that's somewhat of a lateral move anyway.
Yeah.
So I think this is a really interesting race. As Kaylie said at the beginning of the show, the more you dive, the more you find, and who knows what the post time odds are going to look like, but the more reason you find to side with some bigger prices.
Yeah, speaking of those bigger prices, Kaylie, interested in kind of your thoughts as you were kind of diving into this race. I know we were talking before we started recording. There are a couple of bigger prices that are catching your attention in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I was kind of surprised to see Running and Gunning as the morning line favorite. Obviously, Maggie touched on that last out figure, big improvement, but she was beat by 10 lengths. So she's going to be a toss for me here, even though those are respectable fillies in here. I think that the 6 and the 7 are both really interesting at 8-1 on the morning line. I don't think that you'll get that. I think maybe them in a Marth might flip a little bit, but yeah, I was really interested in the 6 and the 7. The 6 has great speed, Paris Lily, and I think that she should be tracking right off of Liam in the Dust and sit a nice trip. But that's the one that stuck out to me, besides your morning line favorites. Actually stuck out to me more than your morning line favorites. So
yeah, and Paris Lily, I think, certainly a positive there is that's a horse that got the job done over a wet track last time out, obviously expecting some rain. There's already been a significant amount of rain in the Maryland area. The rain is not going to be quite as bad over the next couple of days, but we are expecting showers over that time. So expect some additional moisture in the track, and was able to get the job done gate to wire at Keeneland back in April. And then listen, the Mid-Atlantic entry in many ways is for trainer Brittany Russell with Reply. And that's a horse that came in second in the Weber City Miss, and certainly was able to handle 2 turns off Lasix. Finishing second, I thought finished well that day. A little bit of contact in the stretch. I don't think it really affected the order of finish at all, but still getting the upgrade to Irad Ortiz Jr. in the saddle, a horse with only 2 career starts. And that's something which Maggie will touch on in the Preakness as well. But, certainly some of these horses that like a Reply, very untested, but maybe upside potential.
Right. And I think that Reply was able to overcome a slow pace last time, right? She was the only one to really make up any ground, where Complexity Jane was able to wire the field. And I know she got to go up the rail, but often the rail at Laurel is not the place to be. Now, you'd have to go back and look through all the charts and stuff, but just the overriding theme there is that you generally want to be making those wide sweeping moves there at Laurel. So I do give her extra credit points for that. I am still interested in a Marth for Eddie Keneally. I thought last time out in the Ashland, she just didn't look as though she was handling the kickback or being rated kindly. She wasn't being kind about it at all. She was her head in Louis Saez's face. So Louis reunited with her again. I'm wondering if they seek a little bit more of a more forward type of position. Lacara was able to wire the field that day through quick fractions. So it's not a race that's screaming out that there is, a definite pace setter, that there's a definite abundance of speed. So I thought that she could lay a bit closer, kind of like what she did 2 back in the Busher, where she was just run down by Drexel Hill, who finished second in the Kentucky Oaks.
yeah,
I think that. Yeah,
really
go ahead, Kaylie.
flatters her that Drexel Hill ran as well as she did in the Kentucky Oaks. I'm really curious what you think about the horse that looks to be honestly the fastest on paper, and you'd imagine that she's going to send from the way that she drew the number 1, Liam in the Dust. She's a little deceiving because she ran her best figure going this distance, but she's one that does her best running, I think, when she doesn't have much company with her up on the front end. I was curious on your thoughts on this one, and if you think that she'll be able to get this distance with the trip that she's expected to sit here.
I thought there were some horses that could potentially be naturally more fast than her. Now, there is a lot of intention, and she does get John Velasquez aboard, who is very good at asserting himself and making other jockeys comply with him being, the leader.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like that jockey, assignment for Liam in the Dust. I've never been her biggest fan, Kaylie. I looking at her physically, she's never one that stands out to me. She should be okay at the distance. There's a lot of leg to her, but not a lot of her. You know what I mean? Like, she's just not my type of filly. And for me, there hasn't been that much of a progression from 2 to 3 with her.
Yeah, I completely agree. She was a little bit of a toss for me. I think she's one that's going to guarantee almost a fast pace, even if she isn't the fastest. I think that she's going to be doing a lot of running to try to stay with those ones up on the front end. So we should get a pretty fast pace in here, is at least how I saw it.
Yeah, I think it's potentially a jockey's race too. Maggie, to your point of, when you don't have a clear front runner in the race, there's not a horse that just really stands out as just having ones across the board in terms of your, racing form. You start to kind of, that's when somebody like Johnny Velasquez sometimes can take the bull by the horns and just go, hey, I'm going to go to the front. And everybody goes, okay, we'll let Johnny lope along on the front end. And then next thing you know, John's in the winner's circle. Thank you so much for this trophy. And everybody else is like, oh, how'd that happen? But I do think it's going to be interesting. I think that's why a horse like Paris Lily with Joel Rosario, I know we think of Joel as a great closer, but when he's up on the lead too, he's incredibly dangerous. And so, I think that's a horse that, again, if he makes the decision, we're going to go, then that's one that could easily wire the field too. So really interesting, because I feel like it's a jockey's race in some ways.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. I mean, looking at pace figures, Paris Lily is, at least on those, the fastest. And like you said, Joel Rosario, he can let one roll and still get them to finish. So for me, the 2 horses that I wanted were going to be forward, and I thought were just the most consistent and sitting on the best races. And that for me was Paris Lily and Amarth.
Well, the Black Eyed Susan, always a great day, and going to be a really fun race. I can't wait to see what the post time odds are on these horses. I think that's going to be as fun of a guessing game as who's going to win. Yeah. But let's shift to the headliner on Saturday, the Preakness Stakes, the second jewel in the Triple Crown, another 9-horse field. And your morning line favorite is the runner-up in the Kentucky Journalism, very reminiscent of 2022 when, of course, Rich Strike skips the Preakness, but Epicenter, the second, the runner-up in the Derby, goes and runs in the Preakness then and runs, a good race as Epicenter always did. What was your 6-5 post-time favorite? Journalism 8-5 on the morning line. You have Sandman coming out of the Derby. You have American Promise coming out of the Derby. And you have Goal Oriented coming out of the Kentucky Derby undercard for Bob Baffert. So you have 4 horses running back on 2 weeks rest. Maybe we don't need to revamp the entire Triple Crown. So that, editorial comment from me aside, Maggie, interested in your thoughts? And are you just going to say, listen, Journalism's the best horse in the race, and is he going to pull a Smarty Jones here and just run his best race on 2 weeks rest? Or do one of these new shooters maybe jump up and get him?
Yeah, or like, you think of a horse like a Fleet Alex, could he be next to Fleet Alex or something like that? As it is the 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
The most thrilling, I think, Preakness that we've ever seen.
I completely agree. And by the way, as an aside, Maggie, I am the president of the We Need an Fleet Alex Stakes fan club. I don't understand how that has not happened yet. But again, I will let you continue to talk.
Say of this century, because I know a lot of people jump all over me for Sunday Silence and Easy Go or Preakness.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
So of this century. So Journalism, I picked him in the Derby. I like him here, though dealing with I don't want to say fresh horses because, yeah, I agree with you. Horses can run incredibly well off a 2-week turnaround. And I think it's ultimately down to the preference of the trainer. You look at Belmont, who's skipping the Preakness with Sovereignty. It's not something he generally does. It's something that he's not had much success with doing. So turning horses around off that perceived short rest. So I do think a horse like Clever Again, or even goal oriented, like you mentioned, they do have potential upside.
What's interesting is journalism, and Michael McCarthy just pointed this out the other day in an interview. When he was a 2-year-old, ran 3 times in 7 weeks. So it's not as if this horse doesn't know how to run, because he was kind of referring to the Triple Crown and potentially running in the Belmont on 3 weeks rest. So he can run on pretty quick turnarounds. He's a big, sturdy horse, it appears. So that's certainly a positive. Kaylie, you picked the Derby winner. So we should probably let you lead off in terms of your thoughts on the Preakness here. But interested in kind of what your thoughts are on journalism in this race and coming back on that 2-week rest.
Yeah, I had a thought today as I kept looking at it that, going into the Derby, it seemed like, everyone thought or kind of knew how serious this horse was, that he was the best horse, at least going in. He looked the best, all of this. I feel like the connections honestly maybe thought that this horse was, if he won the Derby, he could have won the Triple Crown going into it. And I feel like maybe they were planning all along to turn this horse back as quickly as they are. So I think, not to say that there's, gas left in the tank from the Derby, but I feel like he wasn't necessarily all out that day, knowing that, he would probably end up running in the Preakness as well. So I'm going to go with journalism here, even though I played against him in the Derby. I think that he's the best horse in the field. He should have obviously pace to run into with all the speed horses in here. So I'm going to go with journalism here, even though it is the chalk. I think he's the best horse in here and hopefully get a big price underneath. I agree that Clever Again definitely has upset potential, great speed. Draws well in here. And I'm a little bit interested in at least using a horse like the number 9 Gosker at 20-1 on the morning line underneath journalism to at least get some value there.
Yeah, I think Gosker is a horse that, again, talking about morning line movement, I have a hard time thinking that he and Pay Billy are going to be the same price come post time. Gosker does need to get a little faster on the speed figures, but that's a good looking horse and sired by Nyquist. I mean, I just love the pedigree for Gosker. But Maggie, interested in your thoughts with regards to, some of the horses that are going to be familiar to us, like a Sandman, obviously American Promise, D. Wayne wheeling a horse back on 2 weeks rest, nothing new there. But some of these other horses, like a River Thames, we saw on the Derby trail, although skipping the Derby itself. I mean, River Thames, this is a Todd Pletcher horse, but a little bit more of a Chad Brown move of a horse that qualified for the Derby, skips the Derby willingly and points to the Preakness instead. We've seen Chad have success with that. Is he a horse that I've never gotten a good sense that he can get a mile in 3/16, but maybe he can?
He's a horse that I haven't seen, physically up close and personal, as I often like to get a good gauge on what I really think about them. And I can see why you have that sentiment given his pedigree. Out of a discreet cat mare, which is a little bit more sprint orientated. So I like the fact, though, that going 1.1 miles in the bluegrass, I know, one could say that maybe he hung a little bit, but he kept responding. Irad was scrubbing on him from, the backside all the way around the turn. And in the end, he was only beaten 3/4 of a length. So I don't really want to dismiss him automatically. Mm-hmm. Horse that doesn't want the distance, and he's run fast enough in all 4 of his career starts, and the fact that he's consistent, I think speaks volumes. So yes, does he have upset potential to journalism? I think 100%. It's the one classic that Todd hasn't won is the Kentucky the Preakness. And it's funny, I was reading Dave Grenig's article, and that considering that this is the last year that we're supposed to run the Preakness at the old Pimlico, in the last 45 years, I think Baffert, Lucas, and Asmussen have teamed up to win 17 of those, which really cool. And they're all here in the race as well.
They are, yeah.
what? Sorry, I don't
No, go ahead.
like American Promise or Sandman coming back. I know maybe that sounds counterintuitive, but they didn't run that well. And okay, fine, if you want to use the track excuse. Well, who's to say there's not going to be a wet track on Saturday as well again?
Yeah.
So, if anything, I want journalism coming out of there. I like River Thames, and I also think that Clever again, though we'll see how he negotiates the fact that there might be another horse in front of him. I think he's a very, very talented horse.
And Maggie, I wanted to touch on this point just very quickly because Clever again's got, quite frankly, an unusual running line in that this is a horse that debuted in one of those 4.5 furlong baby races at Keeneland in the spring. And I'll be honest, you rarely ever see those horses turn into classic distance horses. And the fact that this horse ran in debut there, and then Steve puts this horse on the bench for as long as he did, and the horse has now come back, won the next two, and I mean, just easily beat a horse like Gaming, who we saw come back to run third, I should say, in the Pat Day Mile. This is a really talented horse, but and first of all, an unusual pedigree in terms of American Pharaoh out of a Galileo mare. So this one, I mean, could run marathons, it seems like.
On the turf,
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. He does get that distance test, obviously, with the Preakness. But, based upon his figures, he's definitely one of the fastest horses in this race. No matter what metric you use, he's one of the fastest.
Mm-hmm.
He is. And I think it'll be interesting. Obviously, the big question is going to be, does Flavian kind of send hard with goal oriented, who has shown the ability to come from off the pace as he did in debut from that inside rail. Clever again, obviously will want to try to clear most of the field going into that first turn. And so those two will be up on the front end. American Promise, a horse that is fast, but not quick, maybe out of the gate, might be kind of sitting that more at third position. And then you have a horse like Gosker, River Thames kind of tracking. And Michael McCarthy was very, candid in an interview recently. He said, journalism can lay close if he needs to, if he wants to, he can lay close. And he actually said he was further back in the Derby than they had anticipated. I kind of thought he would be sitting around where he was, but they thought maybe, 6th or 7th rather than 10th where they were.
Yeah, I kind of gleaned that as well from the pre-race kind of interviews with the Derby that we heard from Michael, and I thought it too, because naturally you think California and those horses just run quicker races. So therefore, when they east, they're often more forwardly placed than what they may have shown in those California races. So I agree with you. I think he is handier than that race would suggest. I do think that, because of dealing with the slop, dealing with, abundance of kickback, and he was kind of negatively affected during the stages of that. And I think that's why Rispoli, who was concentrating on also saving ground, found himself a bit further back than what they may have anticipated.
Yeah. Going to be a fun race. Certainly if journalism wins, all of us here have our fingers crossed that he's going to end up running the third leg so we can see a sovereignty journalism rematch in the Belmont Stakes at Saratoga. That would be a lot of fun. Kaylie, I want to let you talk a little bit. I know you had mentioned Gosker, because I want to just mention kind of a long shot in here as well. You had mentioned Gosker as a horse I know you've liked for a while, even going back to that Lexington Stakes, and a horse that, again, on the figures might be a little slow, but has some upside potential.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this horse, honestly, there's not much to diss about the horse. Only 3 career starts, has every right to improve. Nyquist out of a Tappet mare. You'd imagine that the extra distance that this horse could improve as well. I thought he drew well to the outside. He has really good tactical speed. So I think that he can sit off 1 or 2 horses and maybe sit a nice trip, so long as he's able to get the distance in a clean trip, which pedigree suggests it will be no problem. And also, if it does rain, I know he doesn't have any experience over and off track, but pedigree also suggests that he can handle that as well. So I thought 20-1 on the morning line was pretty high. Don't think you'll get that, but he's pretty interesting in terms of supers. And I'm pretty curious to hear your thoughts on the number 4, Maggie, Heart of Honor. This horse in the UAE Derby obviously finished second to Admire Daytona, who we saw run back dead last in the Derby. Saw a video of this one today, and he looks pretty good moving over the track, but that not much to put weight on based on that, but curious what your thoughts were on this one.
I think it's really, really cool that he's come, and Jamie Osborne, his trainer, is such a character that I think he'll create interest in the race abroad. Do I like his chances? Not necessarily. Do I think he's a nice enough horse? Absolutely. I love Jamie's quotes as well. He said, to equate this move to, let's say, football, aka soccer for us Americans, we're not kicking inside the box here. We like those penalty kicks. We're kicking from, off to the side here to try to have a shot. And look, Meyer Daytona didn't run very well in the Derby. I didn't expect him to run that well. So I don't think he's coming in here with maybe a formful record. But am I looking forward to him being here? Yes.
Me too.
Yeah.
Looks pretty good on the track, but
yeah, he's a very good looking horse. I've seen a lot of the training videos from Lambourne. I'll have to go back and watch the one of him on Pimlico Circus.
Yeah, I know he's a nice horse, and it's just nice to see these international runners coming over in general. Maggie, your point. So excited to see that, and yeah, excited for a great weekend. You're going to be down there on Saturday. Now, are you going to be covering anything for us down there? Or are you just going to be just there for fun?
Just there for fun. I
wish I could be there for fun.
I don't often get to do just for fun racing anymore, but I do like maybe a walk down memory lane of all the spots of Pimlico that I grew up going to before.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we don't see you running on top of the porta potties or anything like that. We don't.
It's really funny. So a girlfriend of mine from high school that she and I and another friend of ours it was the first time we went to the infield before it was when it was the running of the porta potties.
Yeah.
Back in 2002, and she's coming Saturday, so we get
fantastic. Love it.
So yeah,
always a lot of fun. I was in the infield in 2004. I saw things that I wish I didn't see that I've been spending the last 21 years trying to forget. So listen, it's going to be a lot of fun. The Preakness always is, and can't wait for a great weekend of racing at Pimlico. So make sure to support all of the great Maryland players by playing here on NYRA Bets as well, and betting all of the races. Maggie, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Hope you have a wonderful weekend down there, and good luck to Tom's horse as well. So very excited for that. Kaylie, you and I are going to be talking about all these races a lot more throughout the next couple of days for NYRA Bets. So listen, folks, thanks so much for tuning in, and make sure to press that like and subscribe button today. For Maggie Wolfendale and Kaylie Shapiro, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races, and reminding you it's now post time.